Some wounds do not come from enemies. They come from the dinner table, from the parent who was supposed to be safe and was not, from the sibling who knew exactly where it hurt and aimed there anyway, from the family that smiled in public and said things in private that took years to unhear. The wounds that go deepest are not from strangers. They are from the people who were supposed to love first. There is a version of childhood that looks fine from the outside. The house was there. The food was there. The school clothes were there. By every external measure, nothing was wrong. And yet something was always wrong. Something that did not have a name for years. Something that only became visible much later, in adulthood, in the specific ways that relationships felt impossible, that trust felt dangerous, that the voice inside always said the same thing. You are too much. You are not enough. You should be different than you are. That voice did not come from nowhere. It was installed, carefully, repeatedly, by the people who had the most access to the most unformed version of a person, before the defenses were built, before the ability to question what was being said about what was being shown, before there was any framework for understanding that the way they treated a child was not a reflection of the child's worth, it was a reflection of their own unhealed damage. The family that broke something, they were not doing it because of who the child was. They were doing it because of everything they had never dealt with in themselves. That does not make it hurt less, but it changes what the hurt means. Before going further, one question in the comments. What is the one thing a family member said or did that took the longest to unhear? Not their name, not the full story. Just, what was it? Drop it below. Every single comment gets read. Neuroscientist Martin Teicher at Harvard Medical School spent 20 years studying the neurological impact of childhood emotional wounds, specifically the wounds that come not from strangers or accidents, but from the people responsible for a child's care. What his research found permanently changed how scientists understand the relationship between family environment and brain development. When a child experiences repeated emotional harm from a caregiver, criticism, emotional unavailability, conditional love, manipulation, unpredictability, the brain does something extraordinary to survive it. It restructures, specifically the areas responsible for emotional regulation, threat detection, and the assessment of whether people are safe. The amygdala, the hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex develop differently in response to a home environment that is emotionally unsafe. The brain, trying to protect the child, becomes hypervigilant. It learns to scan for danger in the people closest to it. It learns to associate intimacy with unpredictability. It learns to hold love and threat in the same hand, because that is what the earliest experience of love taught it. This is not weakness. This is survival intelligence. The adult who finds it difficult to trust people who claim to love them, who feels safest alone, who reads kindness with suspicion, who sabotages relationships before the other person can leave first, is not broken. They are running the exact software their childhood installed to keep them alive. And Teicher's research found something else, something that is almost never said out loud in conversations about family wounds. The neurological impact of emotional harm from a caregiver is measurably greater than the neurological impact of emotional harm from a stranger. Not because the acts themselves are necessarily worse, but because the brain processes threat from a trusted source differently than threat from an unknown one. Threat from a trusted source does not just hurt. It rewrites the architecture of trust itself, which is why the family wound is the wound that stays longest, not because of weakness, because of neuroscience. Here is what most people never say about the family that hurt them. The most damage was not done by what they did. It was done by what was learned to do to survive them. The shutting down, the people-pleasing, the shrinking, the constant monitoring of other people's moods, the inability to ask for what is needed without feeling like a burden. Those adaptations kept a child safe in an unsafe environment. They became the prison in adulthood. Psychologist Gabor Maté, who spent decades working with people whose early family wounds had shaped every aspect of their adult lives, made an observation that stopped entire audiences when he said it. The question is never why the addiction, why the depression, why the anxiety, why the self-sabotage. The question is always why the pain, and the pain in almost every case leads back to the same place. Not to a dramatic event, not to a moment that can be pointed to on a timeline, but to the slow accumulation of small, repeated moments in which a child learned that their emotional reality was unwelcome, that their needs were inconvenient, that love was a performance they had to earn rather than a safety they could rest in. The family that broke something did not do it once, dramatically, in a way that was easy to name and point to. They did it in the 1,000 ordinary moments that added up to a message so deeply embedded it still runs beneath the surface of every adult decision made today. I am not safe to be fully myself. I must manage how I appear. I must earn my place in every room I enter. That message is a lie. It was always a lie. But it was installed by the people who were supposed to be the first evidence of whether the world was safe, and it went in before there was any ability to question it. This is not about blame, it is about understanding. Because understanding where the wound came from, really understanding it at the level of neuroscience and psychology and the specific mechanics of how a child's brain absorbs its environment, is the beginning of the wound no longer running the life. Pause here. If what was just described, the 1,000 ordinary moments, the message that was installed before there was any ability to question it, if that landed somewhere specific, drop one word in the comments that describes what that message was. Not the family member's name, not the story, just the message. The one that still shows up in the quietest moments. I am not blank. Finish it. Because every person reading the comments is carrying a version of that same sentence. And seeing it named by someone else, even a stranger, is the beginning of understanding it was never the truth. One moment before the final section. Creating this content, the research, the honesty, the care that goes into how these things are said, takes real time and dedication. If this has reached something today, please consider supporting this work. Scan the QR code on screen or find the support link in the pinned comment. A free companion PDF is in the pinned comment. It has the written exercises that go with this video. Download it. The most important work happens there. And for anyone whose family wound is so specific, so layered, so present in their daily life that they need a personal blueprint for navigating it, private readings are available through the link in the description. Now the part that matters most. Here is the permission that was never given and that I am giving right now. It is allowed to love a family member and still acknowledge that they hurt you. It is allowed to understand that they were doing their best, given their own wounds, their own limitations, their own unexamined damage, and still name what their best cost you. It is allowed to grieve the family that was hoped for and did not arrive. It is allowed to feel grief for a childhood that looked fine from the outside and felt something very different on the inside. It is allowed to set boundaries with people who share your blood. It is allowed to choose distance from people who consistently harm you, even if those people are parents, siblings, or the people the world says should be unconditionally close. Love does not require proximity to people who wound. Family is not a debt that must be paid with repeated access to the most unguarded parts of yourself. The obligation that was felt, the guilt, the loyalty, the sense that questioning the family meant betraying something sacred. That obligation was installed by the same system that installed the wound. It is not a moral truth, it is a survival adaptation. And survival adaptations, once they are seen clearly, can be chosen rather than compelled. The family that broke something did not get to define what was built from the pieces. That part was never theirs. It was always yours. There is one practice done once with complete honesty that begins to separate the wound from the identity. It is called the installed message audit, and it works like this. Take a piece of paper. At the top, write, "What I was taught to believe about myself." Then, without editing, without justifying, without minimizing, write every message that was installed by the family environment. Not what was said once in anger. The messages that were repeated. The beliefs about self-worth, about love, about whether needs are valid, about whether existing fully is allowed. Write them all. Then, and this is the most important part, draw a line down the middle of the page, on the left side, where this message came from. Not a name, a pattern. The criticism that was chronic, the conditional approval, the emotional unavailability, the comparison, the minimizing. Write where each message actually originated. On the right side, what was true instead. Not positive affirmations, not performed optimism. The actual specific truth that the installed message was distorting. The truth about worth, about needs, about what love is supposed to feel like, about whether existing fully is allowed. Because here is what the installed message audit reveals that nothing else can. The messages that have been running the life were not truths. They were adaptations to a specific environment. And environments change. The environment that installed the message no longer has to be the environment that runs the life. That is a choice that is available. Right now, today, not in a dramatic gesture. In the quiet, daily act of beginning to question the installed messages and replacing them one at a time with something that was actually chosen. One last question for the comments. After the installed message audit, or even just thinking about what would go on it, what is one installed message that is ready to be released? Write it here. Name it publicly. Because naming it in front of witnesses, even strangers, is one of the most powerful acts of separation from a message that was never the truth. Post it below. The family that broke something, they did not get to keep what they broke, because what they broke was not the real thing. What they broke was the performance, the version constructed to survive them, the careful, managed, endlessly monitored presentation of self that kept the peace at the cost of the truth. What is underneath that performance? What was always underneath it, even when it could not be accessed, even when the messages made it impossible to trust that it was there, that was never touched. The wound went deep, but it did not go that deep. The self that exists beneath the installed messages, the one that always knew something was wrong, the one that kept reaching for something more true, the one that is here right now, watching this video, still searching, still refusing to believe the messages are the final word, that self was never broken. It was covered. And uncovering it slowly, imperfectly, one installed message at a time, is not healing from what the family did. It is the beginning of becoming who existed before they got there. If this reached something real, if something in the last 15 minutes named a wound that has been carried in silence, send this to one person who is still trying to make peace with a family that never gave them peace to begin with. Not to fix them, not to explain their family to them, just to let them know that what they felt was real and that they are not alone in it. The free PDF with the installed message audit is in the pinned comment. Download it. Subscribe. The next message goes even deeper.